Can you hear me? हाँ जी महाराज कृपा करो वीर जी.
Can you hear me?
हाँ जी.
Whom
Okay,
we can.
एक मिनट. तुद आगे अरदास हमारी जियो पिंड सब तेरा, कहो नानक सब तेरी वड्याई, कोई नाओ ना जाने मेरा. दसां पातशाहियां दी आत्मक जोत, कलयुग के बोहित नाम के जहाज, हलत पलत की रख्या करन वाले. धन 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 साहिब श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी महाराज. आपने अपार बख्शिश की है पातशाह जीओ. आपने साइबर संगत विच संगतां नूं उदम बख्श के आप इकੱਤਰ ਕੀਤਾ है पातशाह. आप सारियां दी रसना ते बह के सारियां दे सांझी करदे होए गुरविचार आप ही कराओ और अपनी गुरमत अनुसार सारियां नूं ही गुरमत दे उत्ते विचार करन दी आग्या भी बख्शो जी. सही प्यारे मेलो जिन्हां मिलिया आप जी दा नाम चित्ते आवे. नानक नाम चढ़दी कला तेरे भाणे सरबत का भला. वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह.
वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. हाँ जी वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. This is Ravinder Singh connecting with you from Columbus, Ohio. Welcome once again to this discussion on Khoj Gurbani. Before we start today, I would like to simply read out some discussion guidelines that were sent out to the participants and to the general Sangat. As you realize, when we began this on Vaisakhi, we were very mindful of the fact that the process was going to be an evolving one and was going to require ongoing tweaks. So as part of that process, there are some things that we want to reiterate in how the discussions should move forward and how we ought to interact. So as we proceed, first off, let us revisit our goals. First off, it is to engage Sikhs across the world to come together as a Sangat to discuss Gurbani as an integral part of their daily lives. Second is to create a crowdsourced commentary. Now, for those of you who don't know what crowdsourced means, Harinder Singh or Harvinder Singh can probably educate you on that. We want to create a crowdsourced commentary and translation expressed in contemporary idiom. And by contemporary idiom, what is meant here is English, as we speak it every day. Now, in order to make these discussions more effective, the group decided last week that we need to publish these guidelines and on an ongoing basis, essentially tweak them. So here are the guidelines as they were sent out. I'm going to read them now. So here I go. As Sikhs, we are all in a developmental process, which is Sikhi, and when we come together as a Sangat to do vichar, we are all equals regardless of age, ability, scholarship, or lack thereof. All dialogue and discussion on Khoj Gurbani is rooted in Gurbani and the Guru. That is our starting point. We would like our discussion to have references as much as possible from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Bani and Wara. But participants are also encouraged to provide their own analysis based on their life experience. Participants are not required to provide immediate references, but if asked, should be able to validate or substantiate their position in the light of Gurbani. While all participants are equal, some of us have more life experience, not to mention an acknowledged and recognized subject matter expertise. We should call on these members, if they happen to be present, to fill in the gaps or silences that often occur during conversations. Oftentimes, when a question is raised for the first time, people tend to be a little reluctant, and it is at these moments that these individuals, if they happen to be online, should take the lead. More experienced participants can also be asked to record or circulate subject matter-based information prior to the meeting for review. In other words, they could create some sort of a video or put out something in writing that the participants can then review and come prepared. So this way we don't have to sort of start from a blank slate. Now, for the moderators, they must control the flow of discussion to ensure that we stay on track and within time limits. We've had situations where the discussion has turned into somewhat of a monologue, and I think moderators have to step in here and keep people within a time limit. And we've all agreed that the time limit per participant every time they get up to speak should not really exceed 2 minutes. So 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Keep it brief, keep it to the point. There are no ready-made answers because Gurbani is, at the end of the day, poetry, not a set of codified laws. And Gurbani expresses what we term divine intimations that give us direction that Sikhs are expected to explore in the light of the world that they live in. So therefore, the importance of personal experiences as well. And lastly, as participants, be frank and honest, but not disrespectful or antagonistic. Share your perspective in small sound bites that will trigger or provoke interest or a logical query so that the dialogue discussion can grow and become larger, the whole becoming larger than the sum of the parts. Sticks to a simple, straightforward, everyday mode of conversation, keeping in mind, how does this fit into my daily life? That is really the question. So those were the guidelines, and I read them out to you. I believe where we left the last time, we had started with, for those of you who are new to this discussion or are attending for the first time, we began with the Mool Mantar, Ek Onkar, the right place to begin. And we had traveled as far as jugād, sach, jugād, sach, hai sach, nānak, hōsī, sach. And that is where the discussion currently stands. Last week's discussion on Saturday did not quite conclude. So we are beginning with jugād, sach, jugād, sach, hai sach, nānak, hōsī, sach. And Harvinder, I know that there are questions around this. I'm not sure that I'm privy to those questions. Would you mind reading out the first question that was asked by the Sangat around this topic?
Yeah, I think the basic question for the is what is jap? Is the jap is the name of the Bani, or the jap means meditation? So I think we discussed last week session on this thing, and I think it would be wise to go over the panel one more time to see their feeling on jap. Is it a name of the Bani, or it is meditation, or to do meditation?
Okay, so Harvinder has spelled out what the question was, and since we are at jap, I think it is worthwhile exploring what the term jap itself means, and with that I'm going to open it out to the panel. As I said earlier, I'm sorry, I apologize in advance. I do not recognize everyone, and not everybody's name is clearly written at the bottom of the screen. So if I miss you or I can't recognize you, do raise your voice and speak up. So apologize in advance, but I can start the discussion. I see some folks that I recognize whose names I know. Gurdeep Singh Veerji from Amritsar, do you want to start off the discussion?
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. The question raised is jap is Bani, name of the Bani, or it is a command or to say that Naam Kato. So my impression is, I will say impression only, that jap is the title or the name of the Bani. In Guru Granth Sahib, there are so many Banis like that, Asa Diwar, Sukhmani, Gaudi Sukhmani, and the title is written before the Bani started. So like this, and it is more authenticated by this fact is more illustrated by the fact that the spellings used for jap is with occur. I always depend upon the, Vyakaran, which are the grammatical rules which are revealed through the various lines of Guru Granth Sahib itself, and many learned people have worked on this and have got so many, after seeing so many examples, they have come forward with the rules. So according to that, Jap is the title or name of the month. This is what I want to submit about this.
Thank you, Ji. Charan Singh Veer Ji, I see you next on that line here. Do you want to comment on what Jap means here?
For me, Jap is neither the title of the Bani, nor it is that much about the meditation. It is about the Sabad, which is the quintessential of the whole Gurbani. So Jap is to me synonymous with the Sabad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Let me move on then. Did I detect Harinder Singh early on?
Hanji, I'm here. Vaisakhi Khalsa,
Vaisakhi Khalsa, Vaisakhi Fateh, look ke baithe ho gupt. Would you like to chime in, please?
Sure. This is the first time I'm joining, so pardon me if I am repeating something. But I guess in terms of the word jap, I like to go to the etymology first. And the etymology, as I know and understand it, it's coming from Sanskrit, where it's coming from japya, which essentially means bolna, to recite. It is an infinitive, so from literal grammatical angle, the meaning from etymology is to recite. Now, if I take a little bit further, there are Cyrillics titles which are assigned in Gurbani. That's the traditionally accepted view as well. So literally, as I understand it, is to recite, which is recite this is one way to look at it, and the name of the Bani is the interpreted nature of that. So it becomes jap, so recitation as well as the title of the Bani.
Okay, before I move on, just some clarity. I know that Gurdeep Singh Veer Ji talked about the fact that there is an anchor, so therefore it's the name of the Bani. You're referring to it as an infinitive, which means bolana or recitation, and the etymology. Harinder, can you try and reconcile the two views just for the benefit of the rest of the panel, including me?
Sure. So, little correction. When I said it is bolana, it's from the Sanskrit angle of japya. So, the way it's written in Gurmukhi script, there is an anchor, which does imply that this is not an infinitive anymore. So, it implies there's a Cyrillic. I was just saying that if we want to take the meaning, it's not meditation, at least in its what they call tatsam roops, which is where the word is coming from in the language. So it is recitation, and the way it's inscribed in Gurmukhi script, it also is recitation, which also means the name of the Bani itself.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Dilpreet Singh?
I think the way I understand this is that it is the name of the Bani, and if you go by the Vyakaran, ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਦੋ ਡੰਡੀਆਂ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਬਾਅਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਦੋ ਡੰਡੀਆਂ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, and everywhere in Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji we have the Mool Mantar in 2 or 3 different forms. ਕਿਤੇ ਪੂਰਾ ਆਇਆ ਆ, ਕਿਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਓਂਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਆਇਆ ਆ. So ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਬਾਣੀ, everywhere wherever we start a new Bani, Mool Mantar is there, then the name of Bani comes, and then the Bani starts. So if we see in context of Guru Granth Sahib Ji and other Banis, how they are represented, so it is the name of the Bani. It is not that we have to do the meditation.
Okay, thank you. Ikunkar Kaurji, I see you there. Would you like to give us your thoughts?
Sure. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I'm more in the school of jap as a, to not to meditate, but as to recite or repeat. Although I want to offer as a poet that Guru Nanak was a poet, and we can always see double meanings in things. I think if we look for one meaning, we're dismissing the nature of poetry. So, but my understanding of Jap is that it's the one command in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, and marketing. I'm a marketing person, so I understand that repetition is the only way that people remember things. And if you do a great commercial and you do it once, nobody's going to remember it. But if you do a mediocre commercial and you run it 100 times, people will remember it. And I believe that Guru Nanak was giving that command in the Mool Mantra as a practice, just in nature with human psychology. If you just keep repeating this over and over, you're going to learn it and you're going to get it. And that also translates into the title, because Japji is that when we do the recitation, that's the process by which we awaken our own Ji, our own soul, and our own essence. So I don't think it has to be an either-or conversation. I think we can allow the double entendre nature of poetry, and that's my perspective on Jap.
Thank you, Kankar, and that certainly that's a point of view that resonates with me personally. I'm just throwing in my thought. I tend to sort of agree with you. I think we shouldn't get caught one way or the other. It could be the name of the Bani, and it could also mean to recite. But more than that, I think when I think about it, I'm thinking it is perhaps an instruction to recite as well as reflect and contemplate, vichar, which is exactly what we are doing. But thank you for that that insight. I'd like to move on now. I also sensed some time back, I think I saw Ini Kaurji on the line. Is she on?
Yes, I think I can give you the names of, I think 3 people we are missing right now.
Okay.
It's Ini Kaur, Kulwant Modi ji, and Gurdeep Singh ji from Montreal.
Gurdeep Singh ji from Montreal.
Hanji.
Okay. So Ini Benji, would you like to share with us your thoughts on this?
I think everything has just been about said. There's nothing I could add to this. Everything is just so wonderful to be able to listen to all of you. And today I feel I'm in the listening. So, nothing to share.
Okay, thank you. Haji Kulwant Singh ji.
Sorry. खालसा वाहिगुरू फतेह जी। हाँ जी, मैं ये समझदा कि भाई इत्थे जप बाणी दा ना है, पर जिस तरह कोई दूजा शब्द है जप मन सतनाम सदा सतनाम, तो उत्थे जप रिसाइटेशन दा मीनिंग हैगा। So I think jap word has different meaning at different places, you know, जिस तरह कई words वास्ते इस तरह गुरबाणी च हैगा। So I think both views are probably correct, but I am just learner in the beginner or in the Gurbani learning, so I am open to correction.
Thank you, Ji. We're all learners here. We are here to learn from one another. Thank you for that thought. And now let's go to Gurdeep Singh Ji from Montreal.
Sat Sri Akal Ji, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh Ji.
Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
The way I understand it, Jap, it's here first the attributes of the God has been mentioned from the beginning, from waking kahar. Then Jap means not only the recitation of this Jap, these words, but to know more about those attributes, and you have come to the point beginning from recitation or repetition, but to know more about the attributes. A japa jap, it has to go to a stage where you don't have to speak with the tongue, but your heart should do a japa jap. Other place Gurbani says Prabh ka jap japna. So once we know the total attributes of the God, which is mentioned in the whole Guru Granth Sahib, then we get back again to a japa jap. We start from the beginning as a japna from the tongue, but after all, they will get into your mind and soul. Then you don't have to put any effort once you know the attributes of the God. So jap could be a bani also, but also it's a beginning to know his attributes and to start remembering him, either by tongue first and then by heart, automatically. This is how I understand.
TKG, thank you very much. I think we've done one full round with the panel, and I would like to just very quickly sum up what I've heard. Quite possibly I may have missed something, but it seems to me that the general view is that this is the name of the Bani, in part because of the Yonkar, the grammatical rules. But Harinder Singh also pointed out the etymology of the word itself, which comes from Japya or Bolana, and so that means to recite. Ikunkarji made an interesting point about repetition, about poetry, and I personally, find myself aligning with that thought. I think it is the name of the Bani, it is also an instruction to recite, and it's also an instruction to reflect. And I think the other panelists were in agreement. Now, what stands out here is Charan Singh Ji's observation that to him, it is neither the title nor meditation, but it's about Sabad. Of course, the entire Bani is about Sabad, so in that sense, it's perfectly, valid to say that. But I think that there is a consensus here that it is the title of the Bani, and the instruction is to recite it. Does anyone want to have a second comment on how I've summed it up? I want to add to it.
This is Harinder. Can I add a couple of ideas?
Sure.
So, I'm a big fan of the opinions are good, and we can look at some of these things what we just did, but also what is the we can say literary or theological tradition. So Bhai Gurdas comes to mind as being one of the original ones. And the way he presents in his war, he uses the line, Sodar Arti Gaviye Amrit Vele Jap Uchara. So he's using the word Uchara next to the Bani. And I want to add something from Tankhanama, since it is attributed to Bhai Nandlal, and those are the two I'll stick to. And the way he presents in the lifestyle of the Sikhs how these are coming, and he uses the word Bind Jap Pade Prasad Jupave. So again, Japji, it's referring to Pade, which is recitation. So even the tradition, or you can say in the lifestyle of the Sikhs, the idea is that you do something from the tongue, and then hopefully it enters the mind. And that's the process which the two acceptable theologians of Guru period are also presenting. Thanks.
Thank you, Harinder, for giving us that insight. Important indeed in how it's been referenced by our, revered ancestors, by Gurdas Ji, by Nandlal, definitely. But I think we are all generally in agreement that this is a Bani that Sikhs are expected to recite. I mean, it's part of our name as well. Does anybody else want to add to what has been said so far?
Anji, this is Dilpreet. The one other angle I see this is that there was a meaning of jap going on at that time where people were repeating things again and again. That japna was there. And Guru Nanak has recited this Bani, and in this Bani, if you see, then he is explaining that what jap means in Sikhi. As you said it earlier, it means that you read it, recite it, then apply it, and then reflect on it. So he has given a new dimension or a new meaning of jap for his followers, or he has redefined jap.
So do you want to elaborate on how has he redefined jap? Because jap traditionally means something that you do with the tongue, as Harinder pointed out.
Right, and the redefining is that if you see, the way I see this is that Gurbani is Akhar to Shabad the Marg. It has been said that yes, it is the Shabad. So Gurbani, if we see, it is Akhar, yes, you read it, you recite it, that is first you read it, and then it is, we do vichar, which is reflection on it, and then it is introspection, that you see, you judge yourself, and then you make Gurbani's teachings way of your life, Jivan Janch, and then that is where all those guns will reflect from you. So if we read Japji at the end, when you say Jat Pahara Tirat Sanyar, so it is all saying that you use this knowledge and apply it, and how you apply that knowledge. And in the starting also, soche sochna hovi, and then je sochi lakhwar chuppe chup na hovi, we will get there. So he is putting cross marks on the traditionals that, okay, if you go and take bath, that is not going to help you, or
Okay,
it was
I
not
think
going to
Dilpreet,
work.
we are getting ahead of ourselves, but I think what you're saying is really not very different from what just Harinder Singh said. You know, that you start with the tongue and hopefully it seeps into the mind, and once it seeps into the mind, the hope would be that it becomes a part of your lifestyle, right? I mean, I think we are all kind of headed in that direction here.
Right, because it is a new meaning of jap. That is what when I read Japji, that's how I get. It is different from the traditional meaning of jap.
So I think what you're trying to say, and correct me, is that jap here means recitation accompanied by reflection, accompanied by absorption into daily life, not as a simple karam kand that you do without knowing why you're doing it.
Yes.
Okay. Very well.
I would second that view. That's how I have been talking about sabad as sunna, bolna, dekhna, and samajhna. That's how I understand, and I decodify the sabad of Gurbani into 4 different dimensions, and that resonates with what Virji was saying before as well. And I think whatever we have summed up as that, when we understand, when we speak, when we listen, and when we reflect upon that, that is what jap means, not just simply any one of these methods. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think with that, I would say that we are all agreed that jap for us is an all-inclusive term. It is a holistic approach. It is not just recitation, but it must have with it the accompanying reflection and living of that life. So I think we can, at this point, move on, unless somebody wants to say something. You're quite free to do that. We are okay on time. Okay, very good. It sounds like we've said enough about the word jap. And now let's move on to the slok. Aad sach, jugād sach, hai bhi sach, nānak, hōsī bhi sach. Again, I want to turn to Gurdeep Singh Virji. We'll just go down in that order. Gurdeep Singh Virji from Amritsar. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਸ਼ਲੋਕ ਤੇ
आद सच जुगाद सच है भी सच नानक होसी भी सच such we have already defined what is such it here the that here it is about existence, that this Akal Purakh, the existence of Akal Purakh from the beginning of the times, that means beginning of the yugs, like the time is measured in yugs in the ancient way. So Aad such, jugād such, hai bhi such. So for the future time also he will continue to exist, and he was existing, he or it or whatever way Akal Purakh you may address is, that to my mind it appears is the this slope means. Thank you. I have concluded.
Ravinder Singh ji, you are still mute, or Gurdeep Singh ji?
Could you hear my words which I said?
No, not the last ones.
Pardon?
Just repeat the last ones.
The last ones I say that this slope means that Akal Purakh existed from the beginning of the times, and he will continue to exist in the future times.
Thanks.
Hello.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Ji.
Thank you.
Ravinder Singh Ji, we lost you. I think we may have lost Ravinder Singh Ji. I think next we can go to Harinder Veer Ji.
Hanji, I think I find this particular slok obviously is pretty straightforward here, but the literal meaning, if you want to go by, Ad, I take it as being as what is mentioned beginning. That's the meaning. But jugād, there is a little bit more going on here because jugs are usually some measurements of time. Various cultures and civilizations have their own ideas on what an era is, how long it lasts based on their numerologies, mythologies, astrologies, archaeologies, all these ologies we can come up with, what we study these days or various traditions believe in. So jug is the idea of era, and this is saying jugād, whatever your relative aspect of time is, however you measure the era, it says it is before that as well, because everyone, we heard about the Mayan calendars, for example, last year, and how it was creating a particular kind of Armageddon in the press. So this is saying jugād, whatever your concept of era or time or space is, it is before that as well. Ha obviously is, which means currently, presently, and ha is that, and he is in the future, which is referring to all the times to come. So this is essentially saying whatever is the existence of Ikko Ankar is untouched, it's constant, it is not dependable on particular understandings of times and eras.
Thank you, Ji. Ravinder Singh Ji, you have to unmute. I think next we can go to Diljit Veer Ji. Dilpreet Singh Ji.
Anji, I think whatever has been said, that is, I agree with that completely. And there is one other aspect which comes to my mind from the Vyakaran side. It is that it is the style how poetry was written earlier. The style was that in the first shalok, you give the definition of your ist or your source or about whom you are trying to explain. So that definition is given, and then the Bani is there, and then there is a shalok at the end which summarizes the complete meaning of the Bani. So that style is also followed in this. So that is what the shalok and the meaning, as Harinder Veer Ji said, Ad Sach, Jugād Sach, it is beyond time. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, Ji. I think next we can go to Ekam Kaur Ji.
Thank you, Ji. There's just, I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing, and it's pretty straightforward. I think the only, added dimension that I might have to offer is that, when I was translating Gurbani, the word such, gets translated as truth, and truth is such a interesting and potentially problematic word in the English language because of the philosophical history around people trying to define truth. So when I see the word such in Gurbani, I always go to the 37th Puri of Japji Sahib, the Sach Khand Vise Nirankar, Kar Vekan Nadar Nahal, this notion that such refers to the formless consciousness that just watches everything and is doing everything from that state of watching and being with it all. And that's just one issue in translation, is that the word truth in English really doesn't give the dimension of how such khand and how that's defined in Japji. So that's really the only thing I have to add to the conversation.
Thank you, Ji. Next we can go to Charan Singh Ji, Toronto.
I would appreciate in case members can clarify me the same slok is mentioned as the I think 16th pauri in the Sukhmani Sahib also. Ad sach, jugād sach, bhi sach, nānak hōsī bhi sach. My take on this is that this particular slok actually, why we are considering it as a bani or why we are considering it as a slok, at the back of our mind is that particular ashtapadi that follows that slok. So that pattern is in our mind when we consider jap as a bani, or jap as a title even, or jap as a slok even. But for me, this is very, very quintessential aspect of Gurmat, which has been introduced right at the beginning. Normally, the time has 3 dimensions. It's in present, future, and past, right? But as most of the members were mentioning, the primal beginning, which was before even the jugas, the time classification starts. So then there are 4 things, which is primal to the past, and then past, and the present, and the future. But there's, to me, is another 5th dimension, which is hidden in the present itself, and that is the nānak part of it. So I feel that sach has those 5 domains in which it dwells. In the nānak, yes, we need to connect that nānak, and that's how we will be able to see what was in the primal beginning, what was in the past, what was in the present, and what was in the future. So it's more on the timelines about the presence of Akal Purakh, the eternal, the time, who comes in time and who is away from the time as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Ji. I think we will come back to all these questions after we take a one round. Next, I will go to Kulwant Singh Ji.
I don't think I have much to add. I think it is Vaheguru's from beginning of the universe, now and for future, and is only truth. As such can't such I don't know, but was the different as such and such can't, both are little different, but I think we'll probably have to discuss that more when we will come to that, or stanza. Right now, I think such the matlab the truth ye the ye मैं सोच मेरा ख्याल है. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much, Ji. I think next we can go to Gurdeep Singh Ji in Montreal.
श्री राग महला पहले भी लिखा है, नानक साचे को सच जान. Such is sacha is one definition of the God. So sacha is the name of the Paramatma. Sachas have ek tu, then sacho sachate vartaya. So that means the truth. The other participant, she was right, saying truth as a sacha does not work to that extent, as sacha or such is for the God. He's the only one. The other definition, I agree with everybody. He was in the beginning, he is now, he will be everlasting. So my point is only, sacha means such, Paramatma nu sacha. Nānak sach, dhyan sach. Jo mar jambe so kach and kach. So he's the only one. Anyway, that's what I think is the definition of the God. And such is the one word. Okay, thank you very much. That's what I can say about such.
Thank you,
Hi,
Ji.
Harvinder. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much, Ji. I think only Inik or Panji is left. I think everyone have one round, and then we have few questions from Charan Singh Ji from Toronto, and then I think and yourself.
Hanji, Inik or Panji? Can't hear her.
I think.
Hanji. Okay, you're cutting off.
Today I'm more.
I think she's having some issue with the mic. I think, Vinder Singh ji, why don't you give your version and then we go back to her?
I've kind of heard bits and pieces of it, and actually I'm quite my thoughts about it are quite like what Harinder expressed earlier, that this is really talking about an existence and a reality that precedes and will go beyond any notion of time that we may have. So I'm sort of, I think it's fairly simple. Did you say that there were some questions that Charan Singh Virji had?
Yeah, what I'm trying to address is that when we say Ad Sach, Jugād Sach, Bhi Sach, Nānak, hōsī Bhi Sach, this is not these are not 4 dimensions, first of all. I can count those 4 which are normally understood as primal beginning, which was before the time, then past, present, and future. When we understand these as 4 dimensions, it seems to me that we are probably missing the 5th dimension, and that fifth dimension is of the continuity, and that is what the Naam is, which threads the Sach to all these 4 stages and stays with the Sach as an inseparable part in all these four stages, and that is how the relationship of Sach and Sat is. My question actually was that the reason we are assigning it as a slok, and we are assigning it as a starting of the Bani, is because when we read Sukhmani Sahib, there is a slok with the similar verse, and that is followed by Ashpati. Probably at the back of our mind, that is the reason probably we are trying to address this particular part as a slok. But however, to me, here Guru Sahib has given a continuity of whatever for me, from Satnam to Guru Prasad, the Mool Mantar part, that is the Naam, and this is the Jap is the Sabad, and this Ad Sach Jugād Sach is the continuity between the Sach and the Satnam. That's how I feel. Thanks.
So what was your question?
Well, I wanted to ask, yeah.
Or actually, you want to make an observation?
No, I wanted to ask, why are we calling the Ad Sach Jugād Sach as a slok? By the time
okay, that's
yeah, because
that's a fair question. Can I reach out to the panel and and take up this question? So basically, what Charan Singh Virji is saying is that why are we referring to this as a slok? So Harinder, do you want to start with that?
Well, I can try. I mean, one thing, since there was some discussion about the word Sach, actually, let me read a line it's simple and I like it, and this is what Veer Singh writes about the word Satnam Devija Sacharya plus in the Salok, and you guys will agree with it because other people have written similar things, but the idea here he's saying is Sat Pad da arth hai Trakal Abad Roop जो सदा थिर है अगे चल के आद सच जुगाद सच है भी सच नानक होसी भी सच आंख के गुरु जी ने सत पद दा भाव आप ही खुल कर देता है मतलब जेड़ा सदा थिर रहने वाला. So point is that what was just said about there is a continuity, agreed, that's why it's more like a constant. Personally, I prefer the word infinity because it captures the 4 plus the 5th dimension mentioned, which essentially is saying that this continues to infinity and it's a constant. It is not dependent on the time and era. Anyway, so that's the part about the Sach or the Sat And I totally agree, the word has multiple meanings. In this context, it seems like that's what it is, because the slok is itself doing the vyakhya of the word sach by providing to us the timelines. Because otherwise, if you look at the idea or identity of whatever people's perceptions of God was, it was at a particular time for a particular space, not relevant to all times. And this makes it very sort of infinity sort of an idea. The other question regarding sorry?
I'm sorry. I meant to ask you. Can you help us with some examples of people's notions of God within particular time spaces?
I mean, that'll get into. I think everyone knows that people have different ideas, and the word God itself becomes located in history only. But the point I was making was that Veerji just provided this idea of a fifth dimension, which is incorporating in here. I agree with that. It's basically that this is continuous and it is constant and it continues to whatever negative to positive infinity is, so which basically makes it infinite. But regarding the slok, because that's where the exists. So yeah, the slok does come in Sukhmani Sahib. I think it's the 17th Ashtapadi. It's the first slok of that. And in that Ashtapadi, there's a great description within the, I think, the preceding two padiyas describe what the slok is saying there. Because there it is listed as a slok, so we can learn from that evidence that it is a slok. So actually it's a more of a technical question. If somebody doesn't want to call it a slok, don't call it a slok. But since it's technical, and we have internal evidence in Guru Granth Sahib where it is listed as a slok in Sukhmani Sahib, that sort of deduces that it is a slok.
Thank you, Harinder. Does anybody else want to add to that on why is it a slok, or why do we refer to it as a slok?
Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa Ji Fateh Ji. Am I on air?
Hanji.
This was actually mentioned by Guru Nanak's first son, Sri Chandji. Guru Arjan Dev Ji wanted to give respect to him, and he appeared at the time when the Sukhmani Sahib was being recited by Guruji. Then he told him to contribute something to this Gurbani, and he said he doesn't have any right, so he just repeated the first slok, with the exception of that one Sihari he put instead of Bihari. So if you see the difference between the first, in the beginning of the Guru Granth Sahib, and in this one, there's one difference only, Bihari there in the beginning of Guru Granth Sahib and Sihari there. So he ended it up. So because it was the continuity of every Ashtapadi with the slok, so Guru Sahib put slok, they respected him to ask him to add his Bani. So instead of adding his Bani, he just repeated the first thing with the little difference of B or B. So this is what I know myself anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Does anybody else want to make a comment on the salok and why it's a salok?
Yes, I want to make comment about 2 points. That is one question Ravinder Ji has asked, how the different people have named God in different times. Like the example is from Hindu religion, Trete vich Dwapar, or Trete vich Ram and Dwapar vich Krishna. So like this, the God has been at different times have addressed with the different names,
yes,
or different identities. The second part I want to say is that about the word sach. Sach has maybe in different contexts a different meaning. Here in this context, what Ekankaji was referring, Sachkhand. Sachkhand is the meaning of a word should be in the context is important. And in this context, Aaj Sach, Jugād Sach. I will quote from Bhai Gurdas War 39, body 1 and Pankti line 4. That Gur Prasad so aaj sach jugay jugantar honda aya. Honda aya, I want to stress here, the such meaning has been understood as existence. That's what I want to conclude.
Thank you, Ji. Open to the panel. Anyone else? Okay. I think that was, I missed a good bit of this discussion, but I think we are all agreed that sach refers to existence in this particular context. I think we're also agreed that we are talking about a reality that is a constant, and that seems to be quite fine with me, unless somebody has any other thing to add to this discussion of Ad Sach, Jugād Sach. I think we can conclude it. We have about 10 minutes left, and I leave it to the panel on what they want to decide to do. Do you wish to have a general question and answer session around what we have done so far, up to Ad Sach, Jugād Sach, or do you want to jump to the first pauri? How about we take a quick vote? Gurdeep Singh Virji?
Avinder Singh, I think I can say something.
हाँ जी जरूर.
I think last time one question came and then we say we already discussed it, but maybe not clearly. If we have time, and I see we have a good panel today.
We have about 10 minutes.
Yeah, we have time and we have good panel today. If we can take a one round on Sargun and Nirgun. So that would, I think, a lot of people, questions came from Sargun and Nirgun. So we covered it in few sessions ago. If we have time, 10 minutes, and we can take a one quick round, 1-2 minutes each, we may be able to, I think, explain that one more time.
Okay, so can you read out what is the question specifically? Is it just around the concept of Sargun and Nirgun, or is there a more specific question?
I think it's more generic regarding the Sargun and Nirgun, and a little bit related to Gur Prasad. So I think.
Okay. All right, so let's set the context here. I think what we want to do is spend the remaining of our time doing a round with the panel, talking about the notion of Sargun and Nirgun as it appears in Gurbani. And Harvinder is saying the question also touches on its relationship with Gur Prasad. So now we have not one, not two, but sort of seemingly three different ideas at play. But let's start with Sargun and Nirgun. And with that, I'll again start at the beginning as we did the last time with Gurdeep Singh Virji from Amritsar. So, shuru karoge ji? Gurdeep Singh Virji?
Could not understand the context of this discussion, but I was lost somewhere. So I'll jump in.
We want to talk about Sargun and Nirgun.
Well, no comments at the moment.
Okay. Charan Singh Virji?
To me, the manifestation, it starts with Uvan Gurmukhe Kyo Akara. So most important part is to understand how the manifestation takes place through the Gur and then Mukhe. I normally try to reflect on Gur and Mukhe as a synergy between the Gur and the Mukhe, rather than just Gur Mukhe as one meaning for it. So my take on that is when we understand Gur, what is Gur for us, the primal beginning, and then once we connect with that, and then the connection speaks through the Gurmukhe, and then the formless becomes manifested. The thought comes into the form, manifested form, whatever is there as invisible. The Nirgun comes to the Sargun form through the Gurmukhe. So the most important part is the Gurmukhe, and in Gurmukhe further, Gur is the most important part. That's all I have to say.
Acha ji. Harinder?
Let me unmute myself. I think I'm muted now.
Sure.
So I think it's a technical question, a little bit, anyway, the etymology I'm going to go back to, as I know or recall right now, is you guys all probably know that Nir is without and Sar is with and Gun is an attribute. So essentially there is a you can say, a complexity or a conflict, perceived conflict in the world of religion with a lowercase r, I suppose, where people are asking a question: what is God? Is it what we might say absolute or personal? Is it transcendent or eminent? So transcendent and absolute will be more like nirgun, and eminent and personal will be more like sargun. So what does Guru Granth Sahib has to say on that? The line I'm recalling is, it says Nirankar Akar Aap Nirgun Sargun Ek. And this is sort of a feature in Guru Granth Sahib of all the gurus, that wherever there's a dichotomy or a seeming conflict, the gurus basically say they're one. So Nirankar Akar Aap Nirgun Sargun Ek. So to us, the absolute and the personal are the same. And another line which I may share is, how does it become personal? Because this is what happens to most of us. We have an idea of Vaheguru, or as Bhai Veer Singh says, कि सच दी पहचान तो सारियां नूं आ, but ਉਹਦਾ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਘੱਟ ਆ. So nasha personal level te chadda. So one of the lines of Guru Arjan Sahib, I think, is Raj Joban Prabhu Tho Tunde. Actually, the line is Thu Nirgun Thu Sargun. So the idea is that it basically, we are not in this debate of is it absolute or personal. We are basically saying it becomes personal to us as we relate to it. And the last thing I would mention is, actually exact line is, the phrase comes as Nirgun Te Sargan Thiya, that it goes from absolute to personal. So it goes from idea, a level of God, to a personal level of Vaheguru or Eko or whatever else we might say. So that's sort of my understanding, that Nirgun is absolute and transcendent, and Sargun is eminent or personal. We don't have a debate on one or the other. We are trying to bring Vaheguru to personal level or the Sargun level for our personal benefits, relationships, and eventually becoming like one.
Thank you, Harinder. That was indeed a lot of clarity around Nirgun and Sargun. I think it is important to remember that the discussion around the notion of God, the idea of God, has always sort of been around this notion of what attributes, the gun. And I think Harinder has explained it beautifully, that it's both transcendent and eminent. And for us, there is really no dichotomy, and that we are to build a personal relationship. Thanks, Harinder. I'll go to Dilpreet Singh now.
Hanji, I think this discussion which we are having is in the context of Gur Prasad. That is how this started. And I would like to repeat one line, and as you have been saying, right, let's raise our head and ask a question, even if it is out of context. In Bani, we say that Pakhan gad ke murat kini deke chhati pao, je murat sachi hai to gandan hare khao. We very proudly repeat these lines, that Pati tode malani, Pati Pati jio. So, but when it comes to our meaning, then I think we try to divert from there. Other day also, because Gur Prasad, when we see that in Sargun and Nirgun Swarup, we are thinking that we will get the blessing. On the other side, is it that if it is a knowledge, then applying that knowledge, blessing will come? I think that is where we have to draw a line somewhere in the sand.
Does anyone want to respond to Dilpreet before we move on to Eko Kaur? I just want to give the panel a chance to respond to this observation. I think what Dilpreet is trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that good is knowledge, and that our personal relationship is built through this knowledge. Am I getting you correctly here, or am I missing the mark?
Right, that is what I think last time also. No, you're hitting it right on the head. That because last time also we were thinking that the blessing will come automatically, and by repeating or by applying. I think that line we have to draw, or that distinction we have to draw. And then once we cross that line, then we have to clearly move towards the Guru Nanak's definition of God, which is little bit different. We all say it is different, but we have to say what that difference is.
Okay. Anybody on the panel want to address that? Chime in?
I think Sargun Nirgun वाला subject जड़ा है वो इतना मतलब with 10 minutes we cannot discuss very much because there are so many different examples, you know. सरगुण जिस तरह पहले क्या गया कि भाई सरगुण मतलब ਅਸੀਂ देख सकते हैं फील कर सकते हैं पर निर्गुण है वो बिल्कुल अलिप्त है ते जिस तरह ਹੁਣ इवन मतलब वाहिगुरु हर एक च वਸਿया होया पर वो निर्गुण अवस्था च है जबकि ਅਸੀਂ शरीर और वो सारा देख रहे हैं जो आसपास जो भी लिविंग ऑब्जेक्ट्स देख रहे हैं वो सरगुण है but it is even for man also. Man is like nirgun, you know. So there are so many depth of this subject that I don't think we can justify in just in 10 minutes or so, you know.
That is a true statement. We certainly can't. But thanks for the observation. I'll move on to Ekunkar Kaurji in the interest of time.
Gee, thank you. Well, I don't know how much I have to contribute to this. When I hear the terms Sirgun and Nirgun, actually, I'm reminded of the 37th Puri of Japji. Not that those terms are used in the 37th Puri, but this definition of sachkhand to me really describes very poetically and beautifully what that play actually is between the formless and the form. So that the formless one is watching everything and bringing everything kind of to completion through its own vision, but there are so many worlds and solar systems, and there's no way to describe them all, there's no way to limit it, and the lights of this, come into the bodies and the forms, and the hukam is guiding everything. So it gives to me that vision from a vast perspective that these are two simultaneously existing conditions always, that there's always the formless, the one beyond any gunas, any experience or taste, that's just watching and guiding and enjoying, and then there's always that aspect that's in form, and we are in our own lives embodying both of those energies all the time. I am in form and having an experience, but through meditation I can get to that place within myself that is beyond my experience and touches that formless experience that ultimately I need to return to and merge back into. So those are my few thoughts on the subject.
Okay, thank you much, Ekunkar Kaurji. And let's give Gurdeep Singh Ji a chance. Gurdeep Singh Ji from Montreal.
Anji, I will just quote 2 lines, but I know it's a big topic. Nirgun, Sargun, and Rinka, Sun Samadhi Aap, Apan Kiya Nanaka, Ape Hi Fir Jaap, and other place, Sargun Aap, Nirgun Bhi Ohi, Kalatar, Jinsagli Mohi. The name of the game is we all are in the Sargun Roop, and we have to get back into the Nirgun. The whole process is mentioned into the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. The more we know, more we dive into Guru Granth Sahib, we will know the link, how to get back to Ninkar. Because api ne ab sajiyo, api ne kiyo. Now, the same way, Jio Pai Pind Jan Sajya Dita Panan Khan. So Ninkar, the God in Ninkar shape, he gave to the whole world like the mother gives a birth to the child baby from her own womb. So in that context, he's our father, he's our mother, and he was in 3 stages. Before Jugas, he was in the Sun Samad, then he is Ninkar and Sargun Swarup. Nirgun Swarup, Ninkar. Now this whole, what we see is the Sargun Swarup, and to get from Sargun to Nirgun is the mentioned Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you very much. I think, of course, I recognize, like the rest of you do, this is not a subject that we can possibly conclude on. But then again, we have time constraints. I think Harinder Singh kind of explained, etymologically, very simply what Nirgun and Sargun mean, and I think the other panelists very beautifully substantiated that by pointing to references within Gurbani, so that this reality we are talking about is both with attributes and without attributes. It might appear dichotomous, but it really isn't. and that the need to build a personal relationship. Now, Dilpreet Singh's question around Gur Prasad and a different definition remains somewhat unanswered, and perhaps at some later point we can pick it up again. Dilpreet Singh ji, all I'll say to you is that there needs to be a little more clarity around framing that question. It's a valid one, and I think we all need to understand just exactly what we are trying to address. We are running out of time, and I want to thank the panel for a beautiful discussion today. I think it was very enlightening. With that, I'll turn over to Harvinder Singh for concluding this session. Harvinder Singh, it's all yours.
Anji, thank you very much. I think
Harvinder ji, can I chime a few words about Nirgun Sargun?
Please carry on.
Sir, I agree to this.
You have a minute.
Okay, I will complete it. Nirgun Sargun Ape Soi, and the next line is Tat Pachane So Pandat Hoi, and this is what is Gurbani. And the Tat, to my mind, is that Nirgun is, when we say Akal Purukh is having recognition of certain qualities as described in Mool Mantar, if those qualities we recognize out of his creation, out of the fellow beings, I think that is the Tat, and that is the Nirgun Sargun Swarup revealed to me.
Thank you, Ji. Sangat ji, once again, thank you very much. Harvinder Singh, you can make any...
I would just like to add just one thing, which is to what Gurdeep Singh Virji has said. The Tat is how the Nirgun transforms into Sargun. Uvan Gurmukhe Kiyo Kara. Just reflect a little bit more on that, and you'll find, I think, that the Tat is through the Gurmukhe. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe we should all reflect on this in our, as we get away from this discussion. We should spend the time between now and the next discussion mulling over what has been said and absorbing. Thank you again, Sangat ji, and I pass it to Harvinder Singh.
Thank you, Ji. And I think we conclude the Mool Mantar and the Shlok. So I think if everyone agrees, we can start with the first body on Saturday. And I think with that, I think we can conclude today's sessions. And thank you very much for joining. And Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.